Y'all know we're always gonna hype our local theater scene, but sometimes we know people want to get away. That's why if you're headed to the Northeast, I'm gonna put y'all on to the Williamstown Theater Festival this summer. From July 17th to August 3rd, among the Berkshire Mountains in northwestern Massachusetts, over 130 artists will take the stage for nearly 100 performances. Some of the offerings include a world premiere from Jeremy O. Harris, a production of Camino Reels starring Pamela Anderson and Nicholas Alexander Chavez, and a new adaptation of a Samuel Barber opera. Discounted hotel rooms are available through June 1st. Go to WTFestival.org and make your plans to immerse yourself in theater this summer. Make sure you stay tuned after the interview for a conversation sponsored by Women Employed. Executive producer Simone Alicea sat down with their CEO to learn more about their working lunch event. Stick around to learn more. Today on CityCast Chicago, one of the things I miss most about growing up during the summer was all the fun we had in the alley, whether it was playing basketball or tag around the block or listening to all of the stories from the old man who worked on everybody's car. And with summertime shot just around the corner and my nostalgia at an all-time high, we're talking about how and why alleys became the backbone of our city. It's Monday, May 19th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago is talking about. Back in March, we dropped 1,000 things we love about Chicago, and something that popped up on the list 6 different times, whether it was about finding cool furniture, fireworks, hanging out, getting your car repaired, was a good old-fashioned Chicago alley. So I wanted to bring in one of our friends of the show, Sherman Dilla Thomas, to talk about why Chicago has the most extensive network of alleys in the country. Dilla, welcome back to CityCast Chicago.
Oh, man. Thanks for having me, my brother. You know, always happy to be here.
For people who are listening, an alleyway is defined as a narrow lane or passageway with walls or buildings on both sides. It is usually between, behind, or within buildings. And as I said earlier, Chicago has the most extensive alleyway system in the country with over 1,900 miles within city limits, one of the largest in the world. About 90% of our blocks have an alley. Dilla, why did we need these networks of alleys? And were these a part of the original idea and original plans for Chicago?
What's crazy is a guy by the last name of Thompson, James Thompson, was the original surveyor for the town of Chicago. Chicago got chartered as a town in 1833, but the guy was here laying out the land, right, land plots and all that, right about 1830. And then the first ever kind of map that most historians use for the town of Chicago, there are alleys. I'm always saying that Chicago is America's true first baby. Right? We kind of, they claim New York, they might claim Philly, but both of those things were a thing before there was an America. You know what I mean? Like there was a city of Philadelphia before there was America. There was a New York before there was America. So we got to learn from all the others. And when you go to New York, it stank because they ain't got no damn alleys, and that was true even then. And so, the guy Thompson was like, no, we're gonna make sure we got a place, not just for like the garbage, but you gotta think it's 1830s, right? You don't want your horses parked in front of your house, right? You want them behind your house and secure. You want to have a barn and those type of things. So alleys have been a thing since there is a Chicago, primarily to move services and goods, to hide our electric wires, and a place to put our horses is why we got them.
You mentioned New York, you mentioned the smell. How do our network of alleys compare to other large metropolitan areas like in New York, Philadelphia, but also some of those big cities that come after Chicago?
Well, yeah, I was just getting ready to say that. I think it's a little more important to see that following the success of our alleys, other people decide like, oh yeah, when we grow, when other states join the union, other cities become big cities, they're like, no, we need those things that they got in Chicago, right? It was just last year that the mayor of New York said, we're getting ready to try these new things called garbage cans for everybody, right? And that's something, I'm like, wait, they had garbage cans? That's crazy. So that's a trial thing for them because of the rodents. And again, part of the reason they couldn't go for that, because where are you going to store all that stuff, right? And what kind of logistical and traffic nightmares do you have on windstorms when the garbage cans blow about in the streets? Our cans move in storms too, but it's in the alley, so it doesn't really affect the way that we do things here in Chicago. So I think New York hasn't. Part of the reason that they have the problems that they have is because there's no way to put away the waste. The other thing that our alleys people learn from our alleys is just like a health standard kind of thing too. You know, rats and mice damn near killed everybody in Europe with the bubonic plague and all of that, and so we haven't had those type of epidemics because even our rodents are kind of out of sight.
What's interesting is if I go out to my homie crib in Homewood, he still got to drag his trash can to the front when it's time to take it out. Why don't you see in suburbs and places around Chicago? Why didn't alley culture and like the design of alleys make it into like the American suburb?
Well, if you look at the older suburbs, like let's look at a Blue Island, they got
Mm-hmm.
alleys. You know, if you
Yep.
look at Evanston, they got alleys. And so some of the ones that don't come as a byproduct of, see, now we ain't got all day for all that, but after the World War II and the GI Bill, and then we redline places that have black and brown people. Well, the only place your GI Bill and that FHA loan is good for is these new things in the suburbs. And so the developers and municipalities, in a rush to collect all that money, kind of lay out these developments without the forethought that older places had, you know, in their city planning, so to speak. You know what I mean? And so, and I ain't trying to shit on Homewood or Flossmoor or, you know, Country Club Hills or Darien, places like that, Woodridge. But a lot of those suburbs are the byproduct of, oh, okay, let's just hurry up and build some stuff and get this bread.
I love the point that you're making because when we ask about the Chicago Alley, it's very clear that this goes back to planning, to organizing, to someone building this into the city. You're talking about that like post World War period. I'd love to talk a little bit about the way an alley, particularly in like Chicago, can both represent so many positive things, like the mechanic on the block, or you know people playing basketball in the alley. But the narrative of the alley is more complicated than that.
Following that post World War II kind of exodus from cities with the construction of the interstate highways. You know, the blockbusters of the day, the people that are solely responsible for why we don't have very many integrated neighborhoods in Chicago were really good at their jobs. And so, again, they painted the new black couple in Inglewood. You know, they're going to be in your alley stealing this, or you know, they're to your point, being in the alley starts to be, you know, lumped together with criminal and dirty and shady, and you know, get away from Chicago and its Chicago alleys becomes a ploy used by the blockbusters, and then because of the alleys and the history of Chicago, you know, sometimes stories get married together, and there were some case right. The alley serves as a community place and a hiding space, right? And so, you know, the same place you're gonna play, you know, piggy in the alley with your boys. Also, is the same place, sadly, where you know some jerk face is gonna dump a young lady he's killed, or so on and so forth. So, I just think the alleys kind of catch a bad rap.
How has the city worked to maintain alleys, to revitalize them, to update them? Again, we talking about something that's been in conception since the 1830s and weren't always paved, right? And weren't always treated as like the thing we need to be focusing city resources on maintaining and improving. How has the city tried to reverse some of that?
Throughout time, there has been focused attention and resources dedicated to the alleys. You know, to your point, they start off as, you know, cobblestone and wood pavers, and then they morph to brick. And then from brick, then, you know, we kind of go asphalt. And if you drive around Chicago, you ain't gonna find very many bricked alleys, right? Because you know periodically they repave them too. There was a in the '90s they were putting speed bumps in a lot of the alleys in order to slow people down coming out of the
Mm-hmm.
intersections. As I understand it, we call it 3FM or Streets and Sands. They have a whole department dedicated to alleys. where there's somebody's job to make sure that the alleys are smooth enough to where cars can get out of them. And it's the beautiful thing about that though, our alleys aren't just solely preserved by the city. The utilities play a large part in the alleys too. They're gonna bring in jackhammers and they're gonna dig up the cement in the asphalt to set a new utility pole, but then they gotta pave back over it, and that's how Chicago ends up. So it's a united effort on why these alleys. In some instances, some neighborhoods, certain stretches of my neighborhood, it's smoother to go down the alley than it is to go down certain streets, which speaks to the level of care that the alleys once had. But like I said, there's a AT&T has poles back there, right? Comcast has poles back there. People gas by and large run through the front of our homes, but water and sewage also can be found in pipes go through the alleys. And in maintaining that infrastructure, you have to maintain the alley, right? Because you have to cover all that stuff up. And so that utility you speak of also ends up serving us as the reason why, even in the harshest of winters, you can kind of get in and out your garage, right? Because certain services have to have that access, and they end up helping you get that access.
I don't know about you, but my spidey senses is tingling because our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man is swinging straight into the Griffin Museum of Science and Industry on May 22nd. Marvel Spider-Man Beyond Amazing, the exhibition, lets us explore the world of one of the most popular superheroes of all time. We can see rare comic books, props, and costumes from the Spider-Man movies, interactive installations, and life-size statues of characters like Miles Morales, Ghost Spider, and of course, Peter Parker himself. Fans can trace Spider-Man's story from its first comic book appearance in 1962 to his latest runs in TV, billion-dollar movies, and of course, my absolute favorite video game to play on the PS5. Don't miss Marvel Spider-Man Beyond Amazing, the exhibition, open May 22nd through February 8th, 2026 at the Griffin Museum of Science and Industry. Tickets on sale now at msichicago.org. Step right up. Cats is under the big top in Paramount's reimagined take on this legendary musical. That's right. The Tony Award-winning musical is at the Paramount Theater in Aurora, and audiences have been loving it. And sure, maybe you've seen Cats before, but trust me, you ain't never seen it quite like this. This circus tent of Jellicle Cats is a spectacle of contortion, acrobatics, juggling, and aerial feats, featuring the cats you know and love like Mungo Jerry, Bustopher Jones, and more. Running through June 15th, Paramount Theater's production of Cats is set to enchant a whole new generation. Get your tickets today at ParamountAurora.com. And hey, use the code CityCast for $5 off per ticket, up to 4 tickets. That's my gift to you. We talk a little bit about this history and the function. Can we talk a little bit about like what alleys mean to Chicago culture? Like not only how Chicagoans have embraced them by large, but like you personally, like can you talk about some of your memories
Oh my
coming
God,
up
bro!
in and around alleys?
Try and make a 6'5" sort of chunky brother cry right now, man. Just thinking about you. You learn to be a carpenter. You learn to be a referee. You learn to be an athlete. You learn to be a politician.
I learned to ride a bike.
How to ride a bike, how to cook. All these things came from me in an alley, right? Like just you learn how to measure off distance. What thing is how many feet from another thing? Be trying to make bases for Piggy in alleys. We lived around the corner from the Moo and Oink that was on 52nd, 82nd in Racine. And so I would go up there and borrow the empty milk crates and you cut out the bottom, hanging the crates on the light poles and playing basketball. You wanted to win the mini ball at Great America more than the big ball, just because the mini ball went perfect with the crate. That's where disputes were handled. And as a 40-year-old in Chicago, I now appreciate let's step in this alley because often those same two people you saw step in the alley on Monday were back friends on Wednesday. You talk about the alley mechanic and his he was reliable. He'd be right there in that alley, changing out brakes, same cigarette hanging from his mouth the entire day. The sense of community, that's how you met your neighbors in many instances, right? If you the front side of your street, you see those neighbors coming and going, but you end up creating a bond with your alley neighbor that, it starts off, you only saw them taking out the trash, and then, they see you in the alley. That's where Chicagoans, I learned so much about cars. I learned that my neighborhood wasn't as poor as I thought it was, not in the front, but in the alley. Of the senior citizens that lived on my block, there had, 1960 cars tucked away, that there was their babies in their garages, right? That's where I learned that there is wealth and middle class in my neighborhood, right? Like the Corolla in the front was how they got back to forth to work, but the Ram in the garage or the Expedition on 24s, right? Like that's what they're working for, man. So Alley shaped us. Alley's provided an escape. Alleys become like your shortcuts. If you're native to a particular neighborhood, you could get from Racine. If you're the listeners, if you're familiar with the streets, it's about a mile from Racine to Ashland, a little less. But I knew how to get there, cutting through people's yards and alleys, and you'd never see me on the main street.
Man, I still do to this day when I go to my mom's house. Like, I remember when I was going into the sixth grade, we had spent the entire summer in Houston with my grandmother, and our parents picked us up and we drove all the way back to Chicago. And me, my brother, and my sister were asleep in the back of the car, and we woke up around 2 a.m. as we were turning into what was a very unfamiliar alley. Had never been on it. Our parents sort of pick us up and bring us in, and we realized we were in a completely new neighborhood off of 92nd and Laughlin. And I remember that first day when we woke up and the sun was shining, and we didn't walk out the front of the apartment to go check out and survey the block through like on the front street. We walked into the alley first and kind of looked left and right, and that's when we realized that these kids across the alley who would go on to be some of our best friends, who had the basketball rim in the back of their house, and then to the right of them is the apartment that had all of the dogs and the motorcycles that would race up and down the alley at night. A couple houses down was the family that knew how to siphon cable off of the people in the neighborhood. Right next to us was the neighborhood mechanic, and it was within those first couple of days we learned that entire block just by sort of stepping out into the alley and meeting all of the families. As you've sort of grown up and start raising your own kids, have you seen that alley culture diminish at all? Did your kids have a similar experience?
Very much so. And so my olders, right? I have a 26-year-old and a 21-year-old. They got to experience, a Chicago alley kind of upbringing. Particularly my son, he played a lot of sports there. Now it's almost like I have to schedule outside time for these young ones because they want to be on tablets and all of that. So they're not getting that experience. However, uh, if those of you who follow me on social media know, I just bought a 1970 Lincoln Continental Mark III. And so now they're getting a lot of alley life because daddy's in the alley washing that thing every time a speck of dust touches it. But also, I've like reached my literally the pillar, the highest I thought I wanted my life to be was to be a lower middle class, middle aged black dude with an old school car that had 12-inch woofers in the back, and me in the alley drinking a beer over the car, talking stuff with my neighbors across the alley. And like that's what I'm doing now, and it I can't tell you how satisfied I feel as a human being. But being outside with me now, they're riding their bikes up and down the alley, and it's the place you can let your dog kind of go, and he can run and chase, and all that. So they're getting that alley experience as well. But then the other part of it is that I'm taking them to be exploratory, and so We've gone to the donut shop that's in the alley. We've gone to the pizza shop that's in the alley. We've gone up to Andersonville and,
Hold
and
on, hold on, hold on. Back up real quick. Hold on. You just throwing out donut shops and pizza shops. What you reference here? I know there's some people listening that was like, y'all got a donut shop in y'all alley. What's the story behind these?
it's on the north side, up there near by Fire Cakes. You have to go down that one alley on Clark to get to it. There's a pizza spot in Lincoln Park that you also have to have access to. You got to go through the alley to get to. And then in Andersonville, there's an alley that has these amazing murals uh, along the walls that I've taken my kids to see. I decided that I need to make sure my kids know what a gangway is, a courtyard, and an alley, or I failed them.
What's the base difference between the three?
So a gangway is the space between two houses on your standard Chicago block, right? It's probably at best a 9 foot passageway that separates you from your neighbor's house. That space is what us Chicagoans call a gangway, right? A gangway is where you snuck and got your first kiss.
Mm-hmm.
Gangway is where your mama pulled you off the block to knock you upside your head. Gangway
That's where
is.
you grab the 3-5 you weren't supposed
I
to.
was just gonna say it's where you get your reefers in the gangway. A court, a courtyard speaks to typically those corner buildings that have, 12, 18 units, multiple address building, right? So the front might have, 4814 and 4816. And if it sits near Halsted, then the sides of the building address might be 812 and 8 whatever. The back of that, so in that backyard is a court, is what we call a courtyard, and that you hang a crate up on the banister, and it's like a whole nother world. And then we've been just discussing alleys, so those are the difference between the three. No, the alleys are literally the backbone of Chicago. It's where you discover yourself. It's where you and your friends trade your dearest secrets and certain things that, memories that you have in the alley now. You tell to somebody and it'll bring tears to their eyes. Um, we'd be lost without them, and that's just the community side. Just I think about how much more healthier we are as a city because we have them, right? Because there's a place where our trash goes that um, doesn't affect our day to day lives. Humbly as can be, if it's taken tens of thousands of people on tours across Chicago, and anytime they're not from Chicago, the third thing they say is, "This is one of the cleanest cities I've ever been to." And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that we thought far enough in the future in 1830 to give ourselves alleys.
Hmm. Hey, Dilla, I want to give a huge thank you to you, all of your knowledge that you share with the entire City Cast Chicago family. As our social media manager said, it is the second city's second city. And
Oh
anytime
yeah.
we need to go down that history, we call you. We appreciate you being here, my friend.
Oh no, anytime, my brother.
Up next, we've got a segment sponsored by Women Employed about their mission and their working lunch fundraising event.
Hey, it's executive producer Simone Alicea here with Sharita Ellens, the CEO of Women Employed. Sharita, welcome back to CityCast Chicago.
Thank you so much for having me again.
So Women Employed has been doing this work for over 50 years. What keeps driving this mission forward today?
The reason why this mission is still relevant more than 50 years after our founding is because the issues are still relevant. We're still working to close the wealth gap, the wage gap. We're still working to get women into any industry they might want to be in. We're still working to make workplaces work for everyone and ensure that they're inclusive. We're still working to make sure that women have access to the education and training opportunities that will put them on path to earning higher wages. And so all of these things, while we have made great progress, there's still so much work to do. And then today, in the current environment that we're in, it's all in peril.
Can you talk about the ways that you are centering women's voices in this work? How does that kind of show up in the changes you're pushing for?
So we're championing their rights, we're expanding their opportunities, we're making sure that women are actually at the table informing what the needs are and what the solutions need to be. We understand what works for us, we understand what we need, and too often we've been absent from the discussion. And we're making sure that women are at the table, we're sharing their stories, we're unapologetic about centering women. It's who we are. I know in this day and time, everyone's afraid to say that they're centering anyone in particular, right? Everyone's afraid to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion because it is being attacked almost at every front. But the facts don't change that diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are still needed. And women is one of the populations among people of color that need to be centered in making sure that we're closing the gaps and making sure that they don't continue to be marginalized and making sure that their rights aren't being infringed upon, making sure that they have access to those rights and that they're able to fight for them without fear.
Mm-hmm. That shows up in Springfield, advocating for legislation, as well as providing direct resources for folks. One thing that is happening coming up this month is the Working Lunch. You've got some amazing honorees at this year's event. Tell us a little bit about who they are and why they're being recognized.
So first, the Working Lunch is May 22nd. There is still time to get your tickets. So we want everybody to go online and purchase their tickets. And the honorees this year, we're really excited about. We have Gail Eisenberg, who is a 2-term New Trier Township supervisor. She's a mother of school-aged children, and she's a civil rights attorney. And so she is squarely centered in the work that we do. She represents women, people of color, and older workers. We also have Chicago Women in Trades, and they work to build women's access and promote their advancement in the skilled trades through programs, policy and advocacy, technical assistance. And then our emerging power builder is Isabel Dobell. Izzy is also what she's known as. She's the current Deputy Chief of Staff for the Office of Speaker Emmanuel Welch, and she previously served as the Political Director of Chicago Federation of Labor.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be really powerful, really interesting. What should listeners know if they want to get involved and attend the event this year?
They can go on our website, womenemployed.org, and purchase a ticket. That's all it takes.
Sounds easy enough, Sharita.
It sounds easy enough. It's May 22nd. It'll be at the Hilton Chicago, 720 South Michigan. The networking reception will be from 11 to noon, which is something you don't want to miss. We will have about 800 people in attendance, so it's a great opportunity for you to network. And then the program and lunch will be from 12 to 1:30.
Sharita, thank you so much for being here again. Check out womenemployed.org/TWL to learn more about the event, reserve tickets and a table. We're going to have that link for you in the show notes as well. Thanks so much again for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
I just want to give a huge shout out to everybody over at Imagine Inglewood, the homie Heavy Crowns, and the entire team behind the Healing House, which celebrated its grand opening on 64th and Honoree. They completely rehabbed and rebuilt this property and added alongside the other community centers on the Peace Campus. This particular place is going to be a community space in every sense of the word. Individual family counseling services, cooking classes, community gardening, a fitness and wellness center. Please check it out. Show them some love. I can't wait to pull up myself. As always, we appreciate you for listening and reading. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow. We'll talk to you then. Peace.